Hi, my name is Dan Nelson. Thanks for joining me for another free art lesson. I hope you're enjoying these as much as I'm enjoying doing them. I want to talk again today about how to do the human figure. If you haven't seen some of the earlier art lessons, go back and check them out. We deal with some very, very basic and elementary principles that help a lot. But I really need to stop this today and mention something so that you don't end up being confused. Okay? There are two separate and distinct skills that an artist uses to draw anything: a house, a barn, a human figure, an elephant, you name it. The two separate skills are this. One is learn from memory or by rote what something looks like. That's one skill. And if I may, that's typically what the average second, third, fourth, fifth grader means when he says, "Are you an artist?" What he means is, can you remember what a jet airplane looks like? And if you can in third grade, then you're the man. You remember what it looks like and you can draw it. In the elementary grades, being an artist means you have learned by memory, by rote, what something looks like. But it turns out that is actually the less important skill. Far more important as an artist is the ability to see, to look, to observe, and to hone one's ability to really see what your eyeballs are pointed at. Does that make sense? Most people, that's actually the biggest difference between those who are artistically gifted and those who are not, is that those who are artistically gifted actually seem to be able to see what they're looking at, whereas those who are not artistic, they don't see it in as great a detail. Let me use just a couple examples as we go along. This is one of my sketchbooks. I think most artists have sketchbooks, and I certainly advocate them. As you can see on these pages, I have several pages of drawings. No, I personally did not go to the morgue or to the museum and break people down so that I could draw their bones. Instead, I had a book, and I hope you have a book. There are a lot of great books out there about how to draw the human figure. I want to make this very, very important statement. Having those books about how to draw the face, how to draw hands, how to draw the human figure, don't do you any good if they're on your shelf. Got that? I know you don't want to hear that. It's so easy to put out your $20 and buy the book. That's the easy part. The hard part is you actually have to draw, not just look. You actually have to copy what's in the book, and that's exactly what these are. So I, as a professional artist, take the book, and I wish I had time to do it more than I do, but as you can see, at least I've done it somewhat, and copy the drawings that are in the book, because in doing so, I'm working on that memory side of how to draw. Now, if I get back here further in my book, I find drawings that are in fact not done from memory, but are done from observation. I actually looked at a human body and looked at faces and copied what I was looking at. And I think between those two skills, it's actually the ability to observe and copy is more important than the ability to memorize, because if you look and copy, you will in fact memorize. Having said that, however, when I go to draw someone, to draw a human figure, it really does help that I already have, like under my belt, if you will, I already have the ability to draw my ratios correctly. So when I'm looking at a model, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to start over from scratch. I can already get a believable human figure is easy for me to draw, and I can begin add on top of that observations. Do you get that? Two separate skills for being an artist. One is memorize, the other is observe. Okay? Don't want you to be confused about how that works. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the human figure. Again, some of this will be review, but you've seen me already several times draw a human figure. Let's get down to just a little bit more detail. Boy, I really need to say something about this. Can I take another detour? This is a very important detour. The ability to make good art, and I understand that some of you may take exception to the notion that I have that there is such a thing as good art. Well, I'm in that camp. I think there is. Good art, according to my definition, is art that's fun to look at. Got it? It's pretty deep, hairy, philosophical. Check it out. Good art is art that's fun to look at. And good art is, from the artist's point of view, the art of making pleasant or interesting marks. And if you've watched me do this, or if you've watched some of my other free art lessons, then at the beginning of each lesson, you've observed me making marks, and you may say, but man, he's just scribbling. He's just making messes. In fact, you might say to me, well, if this is a human figure, then please explain to me what this little loop-de-doop is, and explain to me what this, well, not just that, what's that? And what's this down here? Are you with me? My friend, does that sound pompous enough? My friend. This is the art of making pleasant marks. Got it? These are interesting marks. Now, I could, let me show you some uninteresting marks, shall I, just by way of contrast. Here is a human head. I need to make sound effects, okay? Uninteresting marks, uninteresting. And it helps if you stick your tongue up. So uninteresting marks, tongue noise, grunting and groaning, neck. I'm sorry, I'm almost being overly sarcastic, am I not? Forgive me. I'll get over it in a minute. Hang in there with me. Do you get the point? I want to demonstrate how most, and I'm sorry to say, how most non-artists or not so gifted artists, how they draw. They're really bent on getting it right the first time, and they grunt and they strain and they groan, and their marks are decidedly hugly. In the art world, it's pronounced hugly. And those are not pleasant marks. I would like to encourage you, not only, this may be the most important part of this free art lesson right here. When you find an artist, when you watch an artist work, not only try to copy what he does, in fact, don't try to copy it slavishly, copy the manner in which he moves. Does that make sense? Because if someone is a gifted artist, their hand is trained, if you will. It's really their brain, but we call it the hand. You know, the part of my brain that controls my hand. We're trained at making pleasant and interesting marks. So I would encourage you, when you begin drawing figures, to try to begin moving the manner in which I move. Now, I know that I've been doing this for, as I said one time before, 50 years, believe it or not. 50 years I've been an artist, so I've had a lot of practice and I can go fast. I don't always go fast, but when I'm in the sketching stage, I do. But make a habit of trying to move the way that I move, not just draw what I draw. Does that make sense? Now, when it comes to using a pencil on a regular piece of paper, one of the most important ways that will translate is that you'll be very light. You'll be very light and scribbly, light and sketchy, light and light and light, not bearing down. Okay? I'm using compressed charcoal here on newsprint, so it translates a little more easily. Now that I've messed up that page, let me start another one and talk just a little bit more about how to do the human figure. So again, I'm going to draw light, I'm going to draw scribbly, and if I keep the head that big, I already see I'm going to be in trouble because it's going to go off the bottom of the page, so I'm going to start smaller. If you have caught some of our earlier free lessons, then you know already some of these ratios. But I'm going to stop right there and I can say, let's zero in this art lesson on the trunk. There are basically three immovable blocks in the human figure. One is the head, one is the torso, the trunk, the rib cage to be exact, and the other is the hips. And I'm going to teach you today what the shape of the human rib cage is. Fair enough? So we're going to just zero in on that. Let me go to another clean page and begin again. It took me years of practice to get this paper tearing down. So don't be surprised if you're not as good as me right at first. The human trunk, here it is. To be the most simple as we can be, it would be a square, step number one. That's roughly what the rib cage is shaped like. Now we're going to refine it, step number two, by carving off the corners like that. Now already at this point, one of the skills that you're going to need to employ in order to do what I'm doing is you need to be able to approximate this trapezoid. Let me show you what some of you have already done, if you're drawing with me. You started out with a square, you got that pretty good. But then you tapered in way too much, and you ended up with a shape something like this. Anybody, did I catch any of you? Okay, now others of you, you did exactly the opposite. You did a square, and then you tapered in too little. So it is roughly important, even though I did it very quickly, it's because I'm very accustomed to doing it, it needs to be just about this ratio. Do you understand? If you carve in too much, I mean, that might be a superhero torso, but it's not a human being torso. Do you follow me? So already I'm saying you need to be able to approximate this ratio. That is the human rib cage from the front or the back. Now, if we take this rib cage and turn this person to the side, this person is now facing this way. Okay? There's his head. We're not doing the head right now, but if we turn him to the side, then that same rib cage would be a rectangle approximately of those dimensions. Now, if you get this wrong, your rectangle will be too skinny. So it is quite important that you get these ratios right. In fact, the further we go in drawing the human figure, it's ratio, 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 ratio. So your ability, your capacity to imitate this is pretty important. We're going to refine this just a little bit, basically by tapering it off. This is his stomach side, are you with me? And his back side. That is a human rib cage. Now I hope that you can already begin to see the art of drawing the human figure is really the art of building a three-dimensional model in your mind. It doesn't work just for you to see this as a trapezoid and this as a rectangle with a corner off here and a corner off here. You have to be able to incorporate these two. Let me go to another page. You have to be able to combine those two images so that you are, in essence, seeing something like this. I'm going to draw it in perspective. You have to be able, in your mind, have you seen one of those computer programs that they take a three-dimensional object and they put longitudinal, latitudinal lines all around it and they turn it in the computer like this? Does that make sense? Do you recognize that? That's what you need to be able to do in your mind. You need to be able to take this shape and see it from every angle. In other words, just seeing it as a simple trapezoid from the front and a rectangle from the side is not going to cut it. You need to be able to see it from both. So if in my mind now, if I were to turn this up and look at it from straight on the bottom, what would I be seeing? Are you with me? I'd be seeing something like this. Do you understand? This is a human rib cage as the hips see the rib cage looking straight up into the rib cage. Okay, so you would never actually see this in a figure drawing unless it's a disemboweled person, which you won't go there. You need to be able to do this in your mind and see it from every angle. Does that make sense? Okay, let me go on then to the next step. So we have this block. We're going to refine it just a little bit in order to get closer to the human physique. I'm going to go back to the very simple trapezoid from the front, rectangle from the side. I'm going to do a couple of things to this to make it much more human. You can hardly see a rib cage yet. Let's begin by this arch. And by the way, there are some of you out there that are just so good at remembering all the names of everything. Man, I love you. You're great. I hate you. You drive me nuts. Because there's a name for that. Anybody remember what it is? The Perry something or other arch? You know? If I'd been called to be a doctor, I'd know it right off the top of my head. But I'm not. I'm just an artist. All I need to know is it's an arch. It's this arch that's formed from the sternum down toward the side of my rib cage. Good enough? That's the technical term, I'm sure. So in this view, then, the chest would be about here, and the six-pack, which I'm sure you and I both have in very pronounced degree, goes there, and the navel goes about there. Are you with me? Okay. But there's a part of this torso that is actually much more complicated, and I'm going to help give you a very quick way to remember it. You can see this in 3 dimensions now, right? You can see it? Okay, we're going to lay on top of this a slab, a wedge-shaped thing. Let me go here to the side. And if we put a right triangle, by the way, did you notice that the first line I made was wrong? That's perfectly okay. That's why I do it light and scribbly so that I can correct it. You feel free. It's not a matter of getting it right the very first time. It's a matter of getting it right, period. This is a right triangle. Do you remember geometry? A right triangle, it's a very particular, is that called an isosceles? Boy, there you go. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a geometrist either, but I do remember the shape very well. You know, it's 40, 60, 90? I'm going to get myself in a lot of trouble. They all have a very particular dimension. But I've laid a wedge on top of this rib cage that represent the shoulders. Now, if we were to view that from the front, it would be just like this. Are you with me? Here it is from the side. Now, if we view it from the front, it's like this. From a view in perspective, then, we're talking about something like this. Now, you might be saying, but I don't see that in the human figure. Hang in there with me, will you? I'm doing the human figure from simple to complex. The reason this is a very helpful device for figuring out how to draw the shoulders is that this right triangle gets the neck positioned in the right place. In other words, if you look at a human being from the side, where does the neck come out of? Where in the trunk? And the answer is, if you get the triangle here, that is where the neck comes up. Are you with me? It's just a very convenient way. Many people, if they don't know any better, they'll draw the side of the chest, the side of the trunk, and draw a neck coming right up through the middle. Completely wrong. So that this triangle gets the back of the neck positioned in the right place. You can already begin to see some of the natural curvature of the spine if I just tweak it that much. Are you with me? Now, just one more change from the front to make this more realistic, and that is we're going to cut off the top of that triangle. So we're cutting a wedge kind of like this off the top. Are you with me? Now that's the shape that we have. The neck goes in here, more easily positioned when seen from the side, and the trunk, the torso tapers down toward the waist like that. If you want to add one more element, and then we'll finish with this, a spherical or ball-shaped protrusion coming out of the shoulder. It overlaps part of the triangle that we laid on top. It overlaps part of this rectangle on the side. Those represent shoulders made by the muscle on the top, the deltoid muscle, and the arm comes from there. That's probably enough. If you want to practice that a few times before we get together next time, you'll be ready to go.